Welcome, everyone. You are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Aversano. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Captain's Table podcast, being brought to you in collaboration with The Last Dinosaur. Today's guest is David Price, CEO of Gulf Marine. Gulf Marine is a leading provider of OEM-approved marine lubricants and technical services to the global shipping industry. Since 2008, they've expanded their network to supply over 1,000 ports in 80 countries, ensuring reliable support wherever it's needed. As a subsidiary of Gulf Oil International within the Hinduja Group, they are proud to be a trusted partner, backed by key regional offices that offer personalized services worldwide. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for the intro, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
And as David and I were talking about before, I actually got my shoreside start in the marine lubricant world with then Mobil Oil. So this brings me back to the beginning. But David, talk a little bit about what's going on at Gulf Marine and a little bit about kind of how you got there, how you got here and your background as well as the company's background.
Okay, well, let's start off with my background. My whole life has been in the marine industry. I was at sea for 17 years, ending up as a master mariner. Then I came ashore in the mid-90s working in ship management. And then 2019, I joined Gulf as the CEO. At the time, I was actually a customer of Gulf. So I saw from the other side what Gulf was doing, and I thought it would be quite exciting to be a part of that growth journey. Where we are now, the aim of Gulf Marine is firstly to provide top quality OEM approved marine lubricants, but very closely joined with that is exceptional customer service, listening to the customers, making sure they get the product when they need, where they need, and how much they need. So it's a very, very customer focused business, which is where I bring my strengths, because I bring the voice of the customer, as it were, before I join Gulf.
It's a really unique way of doing things, because being a customer, or at least familiar with it, and then joining a company, I mean, that's something very similar to a lot of people, including myself. Like, I know how to use your product and I know exactly how to use it, and I know the good, the bad, the ugly. So that kind of gives you an interesting view for sure.
Yeah, and it's a big thing for us, and certainly if you use COVID as an example, a lot of our competitors adopted an approach that there was too much risk in delivering. There was a lot of uncertainty, so they were unable to deliver. We adopted a completely different approach. It's like we will deliver, we'll find a way, we'll make sure that you get what you need, and that's basically how we run our business, making sure that the customer does get what they need, being laser focused on that customer service.
Really interesting, especially in an industry, and we talk a little bit about it here, but certainly when we get to the digitalization side, that you're still dealing with people on the other end, even though you may digitalize that. We could talk about that in a second, but certainly from the clients, and they want to know that somebody can walk a mile in their shoes. It's one of the most important things. Just focusing a little bit here on kind of what you guys do, and that's delivering lubricants and then services. That's a huge part of the decarbonization journey in our industry. Talk a little bit about how you guys are positioning and doing things that are really relevant for that, because everybody's looking at it. Lubricants are a key part of it, especially as sulfur content goes down in oil, in the fuel. That actually changes some of the engine and the wear on the engine, if I'm understanding a basic concept of that, but really allows lubricants to play a more important part. Love to hear your view on that.
Sure, absolutely. So if you turn the clock back to IMO 2020, which was the new regulation around sulfur and emissions, MAN, which is one of the biggest engine manufacturers, they introduced a requirement to have a Cat 2 product, which was the main aim of this Cat 2 product was to give engine cleanliness as a result of the fuel changes. And we're really proud to say that we were the first lubricants company to have a Category 2 approved cylinder oil by MAN. We were front runners there on R&D, making sure that we were really keeping up with the decarbonization whole program for the shipping industry. And of course, now we bring ourselves to today. The whole Cat 2 thing is established. Now the discussion is around alternate fuels. What is going to fuel ships for the future with the minimum carbon emissions? So we're working hard on that. So the main options are methanol, LNG, and ammonia. And I'm pleased to say that our R&D work is still going full speed to make sure that we've got a suite of products that works with those those alternate fuels. So we're well placed for the future. We're constantly looking over the horizon at what is coming down the line that will impact our customers. And then on top of that, apart from the products, we've got our own ESG initiatives that are going on inside. Our plant in Singapore, for example, is operating purely on solar panels. So doing our bit in the way we produce our lubricants to make sure that we're doing our bit for the planet and the environment.
That's really cool. That's the first time I've heard somebody say that. That's pretty neat. I'm sure it's something that a lot of people know about. And then the other part of the lubricants that I think of, and I'm sure it's just a small part, but I'm just wondering, only because you're hearing so much, it's been in news, are lubricants around the rotors for wind assisted ships. I imagine that maybe there's other applications out there now, but I imagine that people are starting to look at that as well, because it's not the same volume as main engine lubricants or things like that, but it's still like, oh, we have to make sure that these things can work in different conditions and salt water and all this other stuff. So I imagine that's probably a small part, but something you're thinking about as well.
It's definitely something that we're looking at. And you're right, there's got to be greases, hydraulics, etc., that are involved in this, and it's something that we'll be digging into more as and when this develops. But right now our main focus is on the cylinder oil, because that's the products that our customers really need. So yeah. but certainly we're constantly looking at where the market is going. What products do we need to develop for the future?
Yeah, and I think your view, especially around the clients and talking more to the industry, but certainly that's what clients want, because I think they're worried about being replaced by AI and machine learning, but yet at the end of the day, it's you, David, and the team selling to customers and then adopting to different IMO rules and things like that, for sure.
Absolutely. But again, I think what sets us apart is the fact that we are really close to the customer. So I meet customers on a daily basis. I don't sit in an ivory tower, and we listen to what they're saying, listen to the challenges they're facing, listen to their pain points, and see what we can do to help them. Our whole focus is being very, very close to the customer and helping them get through these pain points.
One thing I always like to talk about are some of the challenges that you have in this. I mean, you talk about things like 2020 and COVID. Anything else that pops to mind that you say, hey, this is an industry challenge, or other industry challenges that you've seen coming up? Anything that kind of pops to your mind, maybe not at Gulf, but maybe in your past that you've seen, like, hey, we've had to overcome this and in a similar manner?
I mean, it's with the way the world at the moment is, that we operate a global supply chain, and of course, when there are events such as the Middle East conflict, the Red Sea issues, we have to adjust our supply chain, and we have to do that very, very quickly, because we're not a just-in-time operator, but we're fairly close to that. So when we see we can't move product, because we ship products around as well. Right. So we can't move product through the Suez Canal anymore. It all has to go around. That introduces a 3-week delay in our supply chain. So we have to adapt and say, okay, where can we move product from that doesn't involve the Suez Canal?
Right.
Where we can ship product from that doesn't involve the 3-week extras going around the Cape. So the global supply chain is a constant issue that we're having to watch all the time.
Right. And not only does it impact your clients, but like you said, it really impacts you guys. And then others, whether it's competitors, whether it's suppliers to you for certain feedstocks to get into how you make your lube oils, that all plays a part of kind of how you view the day to day, really, which makes it kind of interesting, because you're a supplier to, and you get supplied to. So you're kind of got to manage both ends of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we buy our base oils from the market. We don't produce base oil, so we buy our base oils from the market, and that is constantly changing.
Right.
Where the base oil is available, what's the best prices, who we're going to buy from. We have some term contracts in place, but we also do a lot of spot purchasing, and then we have to ship. So we charter ships as well. So it is quite exciting. It's definitely not a boring phase of life.
No, not a boring phase. And then what the other part, just talking about decarbonization, as you start to look at, and this is where I think personally the industry is going, is that people are more and more going to look at not only that you're producing the lube oils at a plant that is run by solar, but then how are you getting the feed base stocks to that, right? And you're going to start looking at CIIs and ratings of ships and things like that. So that has to be a really interesting and exciting part of it, because it's not just, oh, we produce this really clean. It's, we got the oil there really clean, and our suppliers is a cleaner supplier. So there has to be all that part of this really not easy to look at equation.
No, there's lots going on, and a good example of that is, the two main constituents of lube oil is the base oil and the additives.
Right.
Today, in Singapore, we bring our base oil by ship. We're fortunate enough to have a berth in our terminal, which is fantastic. But we bring additives in by truck.
Okay.
So we're currently looking at how we can bring those additives by sea. So we can bring them in bulk, which will mean fewer trucks on the road, fewer emissions. Everyone's a winner.
Right. Fuel, and then of course congestion and other things like that for the local community. That's really interesting, because I do think that's kind of, people are going to be revisiting their supply chain with that in mind, right? So looking at what is my, and if I think I'm using the vernacular correctly, what is my tier 3 emissions? How does the adjacent emissions impact what I'm doing? And I think more and more companies, certainly in Europe, and I know Singapore is really progressive, and we'll get to them in a second, to that in a second, but certainly in Europe, they're going to be looking at that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a team of guys that are working on this almost full time. So it's very important to us.
Yeah, it's really a very cool aspect, because people think, oh, it's just shipping. Man, it is a constantly moving 3D, 4D puzzle. Oh, by the way, we have, a war zone in, a third of the world. We have sanction in 25% of tankers, and throw in a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico that just took out, a significant part of Florida, and, unfortunately parts of North Carolina. So, oh yeah, we got all that going on at the same time. And by the way, I want you to reduce your emissions,
That's it. And we need a delivery tomorrow.
Yeah, we need. Why are you late? I'm going to the other guy. Yeah, but speaking of which, that gets into the interesting part here, because you touched about some of the things that get into digitalization, and that is supply chain and even decarbonization. Talk a little bit about kind of your journey personally, kind of being in the last significant number of years in the maritime space, as well as now with the company, kind of your digital journey and view that you see today.
Being a gentleman of a certain age, when I first went to sea, there was one radar, no electronic charts. We used to navigate by the stars and the sun. So zero digitalization. And then you wind the clock forward to where we are in the industry as a whole, where the digital impact is phenomenal. In shipping itself, it's all about optimization. It's optimization of voyages, optimization of fuel consumption. And we play a part of that. So if we don't optimize our deliveries and we don't get there on time when it suits our customers, it throws a spoke in the wheel of our customers' optimization. We use data a lot. We use data to analyze the ship's trading pattern. We've got a bespoke piece of software that was developed some time ago called Locus. We're tracking every ship in the world. So we know where ships are. We know where their trading patterns are. We look at where they're most likely to be picking up lubricants, and we plan accordingly. So we use this algorithm to make sure that we've got the products where our customers need them. Our belief is that no one else has got that. So this is a constantly evolving process of minimum stock levels, because we're looking at the world trading pattern. For example, we had a stock at Suez. Then all of a sudden, the traffic through the Suez Canal went down. Ships were going around the Cape. So we had to alter our supply chain to make sure that we had product available in South Africa. We do that all automated. So because we're tracking every ship in the world and looking at the trade patterns, the global trade patterns, and seeing where movements are. So it's very clever.
That is fantastic. That's, again, it goes back to looking at a part of the industry that some people may have to dust off or not even realize is there, because it operates in the background, like fuels, like or bunkers, or like the whole industry. And it's a part of the issue that we deal with, which is like sea blindness, the whole the whole part, but you have this part and you go, oh, we have our bespoke product that we track all this stuff, and we can do that. Because I think what I kind of related as is you guys are not just in time, but you got to build a just in case, right? Because that's where the global
Absolutely.
supply chain shifted from, right? We were always just in time. I got an extra 3 rolls of toilet paper in the warehouse, but I know that the 200 rolls are going to be rolling in tomorrow, until they didn't with COVID. And then people start to build that just in case. And it sounds like that's kind of your philosophy.
Well, our philosophy is, as you said at the start, Chris, we deliver in over 1,000 ports. We've got the biggest footprint of delivery capability. And actually, we're headquartered in Singapore, but delivering in Singapore, anyone can deliver in Singapore. It's easy. Our strength is when a customer comes to us and says that I need a delivery up the Amazon.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that Manaus or something like that? Yeah.
And we'll do it. We'll
Yeah.
do it. We'll find a way. And that's where our strength. So we really do look at global coverage, because our customers need product not always in Singapore, not always in Rotterdam, and not always in Houston, which are the reference ports. So we really do adapt to make sure that we can deal with the tough places as well.
Yeah, and I think that goes into a little bit of the nature of the business in that personal relationship. So you may still have this wonderful product that you built and you use, and it gives you a competitive advantage, or it gives you some insight. But at the same time, it's still the phone call from the customer at 5:00 on a Friday afternoon, whether you're sitting in Singapore, whether you're sitting in London, whether you're sitting in Houston. It's still that phone call at that time of day that you have to go, oh, I have a problem to solve. Let's see if I can solve it quickly and to their satisfaction. And that's kind of what I think is definitely not necessarily unique, but one of the unique things that is in the maritime space, that you can have all this software and all this technology, and it comes down to a person calling a person to solve a problem.
One of the scenarios that I'm really proud of my team in Singapore, from a telephone from a customer to having one of our barges alongside delivering a product, was 35 minutes, which is staggering. And I don't believe any of our competitors could do that. There were a lot of stars aligned to help us do that. Our barge was closed.
Was the barge floating by the pier? I mean, basically, it had to be something like that.
It was pretty much there. But it's about that responsiveness. That you get a telephone inquiry and the customer says, I've got a problem. I really need some product, and we were there.
I had something very similar. We had a client about a year ago said, "Hey, listen, I'm starting a new company. I need some software. I want your software." And in software, to have like anything less than a close of like a week or 10 days is pretty good. We were able to do that for this client. He knew the product, just wanted it, just get him on board. And the phone call started with me, even though it wasn't my product. Internally we have different. I'm like, I got you taken care of. Within an hour, we had him set up with the right person, and we did a little demo, and then by the time the salesperson got it, basically we had everything but the bow on it for him, so, but it's like 10 days. And then other salespeople are looking like, how did you close that in 10 days? And I'm not a salesperson. I know questions about like, how did that happen? Well, it was just a phone call with the guy who knew our product and just needed help and wanted to be done with it because he's got 500 other things to do. Okay.
Particularly within the marine industry, but also globally outside. Digitalization is fantastic. We need it. But there's also a lot about relationships, a lot about being able to talk to people and being able to solve problems together. And I don't think that will ever go away, frankly.
No. I think that digitalization, at the end of the day is there, like you said, to help increase efficiencies, whether it's like, rescheduling things once the canal kind of gets a little untenable, so on and so forth, or, having that order on, to get it there as soon as possible. Sure, we'll throw the hose out from the barge just passing by, which is pretty wild. It sounds like that's what happened. It sounds like maybe the captain was at the pier next to him getting lunch or something.
It was almost like that, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of, sometimes that happens. I mean, that's like you said. Sometimes you'd rather be lucky than good, or a little bit of both, right? But one of the things you mentioned, you guys, your headquarters in Singapore, sit in Singapore, and that's really been, one of the definitely the highlights of, of technology. I mean, that must help really and enhance what you guys do on day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. We're members of the Singapore Shipping Association, so we're very active in that sector. They have a digitization committee, which our head of IT is involved in. So we're working very closely with NGOs like the SSA, but we're also talking to the port, the MPA. So it's really, we're involved in all sorts of elements within Singapore. And of course, when we moved our headquarters from Hong Kong to Singapore, when we bought this blend plant, we were talking then to the Singaporean EDB and the JTC to make sure to tell them what we were going to do with their plant, in terms of we were going to hire more Singaporeans, we were going to grow this business, we were going to invest in Singapore, which we are doing. And, and it's really good being part of a community that is really business focused. And I have to say that Singapore is very focused on helping business work.
Yeah, no, you hear that a lot. Certainly from the technology point of view, like you said, there's a lot with digitalization and maybe other things such as green corridors. I think Singapore is involved with a couple of those, and that gets into a lot of the marriage of decarbonization and digitalization. But certainly, the other part you mentioned is Hong Kong, right? And obviously, what we're doing with the Captain's Table and kind of sponsoring this here is, how do you think that the Captain's Table and other similar events, how do you think this helps kind of the journey of the industry from a lot of views, whether it's decarbonization, digitalization, the combination of the both? How do you kind of view that there?
We're really proud to be sponsors of the Captain's Table. When we see this sort of initiative is really positive. I'm looking forward to going up to the Captain's Table presentation at Hong Kong Maritime Week in a couple of weeks' time, if I remember rightly. So really looking forward to that. And I think it gives a platform for people to present their ideas, in an industry that is really quite conservative. So it's really is an opportunity for help startups to really look at some great ideas. How can we implement these initiatives in various sectors of the industry? So really positive, and absolutely proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it's I will not be traveling there. I'm only there in spirit, I think. But certainly it is, and you see it is a great part of the industry, and not only the Captain's Table, not to take away from them, but there are other types of events that similarly go on. Whether it's, I think there was something similar at Posidonia. I know that there is going to be one around the same time frame, like a Shark Tank for maritime that's done in New York. So I just really like it. I also like the fact that you mentioned you started your career at a certain time with one radar. I started with two radars, but still paper chart. But no GPS. GPS was just coming about when I started. When I sailed as a cadet on ships in the very early 90s, there was GPS was still a little new. Yep. But people of our kind of experience level, how about we use that, can embrace this. And I think that that's really going to help the industry move forward as well, is that not just the young people who are natives, but our folks like us who have been who've had to be adopters or adapters to technology. I think that being in positions that you're in now definitely helps as well, supporting these programs.
Chris, you're obviously younger than me, because when I went to sea, GPS didn't exist, nor did sat nav of any form. So
well, maybe not by I don't know if I may have missed you only by a couple of years, but I think that it helps. I think that people like yourself who have a certain level of experience, can look at this and go, oh, we need to be a part of this. And even if it's other people within the company that implement it and focus on it, you're still kind of leading the charge to say, yes, that's okay to do, rather than we've always done it this way. I don't need to change. We make money. We're fine.
I'm actually the oldest person in the company now. I'm sad to admit. I really am all constantly thinking about evolution, about how we can change. What do we need to do to get better? For me, a big mantra is we're on a growth pattern, really growing, which is great. To use an old saying, I don't want my team to work harder. I want them to work smarter.
Absolutely.
And if we double our volume, I can't afford to double our people. So I'm very keen on bringing in systems that will make life easier for my team, but at the same time maintaining that personal touch with the customer.
that's a tricky balance to have no matter what part of the industry you're in or any industry, right? You start to rely on systems. I had something that happened the other day. Well, it wasn't yesterday, it was the other day. On a personal note where it was a service that my family we've used for 20 years. It was a small company that we used. It was bought by a bigger one and then a bigger one. And then like they almost had a mess up that cost us a huge headache. And it was because they were relying on a system instead of the personal touch. And it was like playing out in real time. And I'm going, this is the downfall of systems, right? Because when we got the client service person on, they didn't know who we were. They didn't know which company we started with. They could care less. And we said, well, this is happening. Can you help us? No, you're not on the schedule for another 2 weeks. I'm like, yeah, but this is a problem today. And it wasn't until we got like the manager that we got it solved. But it's the same thing. It's anytime you introduce a system, you do have to be careful that you lose that personal touch.
Absolutely. And I'm pleased to say that our customers get the mobile phone number of our customer service people, so they get to know the person, they get to know them by name. There's a relationship, so we will never lose that.
And I think that's a focus for any company, especially in our space, because it's a small industry. I was trying to do a mental math. How many people actually work ashore in our industry? 500,000, maybe, right? If you take all the companies, 1 million, even if it's that many across the world, and generally people stay in the same area. So you have a lot of overlap. You may be, like you said yourself, I was a client, now I run the service provider. That's not unusual, right? My part of the world, charterers go work for owners to become a broker, become an owner again. It happens every day. One of the questions I do like, and your enthusiasm is infectious. So why should somebody who comes in, maybe you have an intern from one of the local maritime, well, not maritime schools, but one of the local, let's say, technology schools in Singapore, why should they join the shipping industry?
So it's really interesting. But before I answer that question, I have to say that I really do practice what I preach. And when I say that, I've got 2 boys. They're not boys now; they're young men, both in the maritime industry. So one of them is a shipbroker with a small brokerage, and the other one is a superintendent with some operations in the North Sea in the wind farms.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
I think that shipping is exciting. It's boring. It's never boring. Sorry, you'll have to edit that bit out.
It is. It is. It's either there are times though where there is boredom, but was it punctuated with
periods of chaos.
Periods, yeah. And sometimes those periods last too long. But
but you working ashore. It's just never boring. You meet interesting people. I've been really fortunate to travel the world and meet loads of people. As I said to you when we started, I'm currently talking to you from Houston.
Right.
I've got an amazing team here in Houston that are working really hard. So I think it's an amazing dynamic industry, and I would encourage anyone to get involved in it.
Whether you go out to sea and take a longer career path like yourself at sea for a significant number of years, or myself, I think I spent 4 years in total, not including my time as a cadet, at one of the maritime schools here in the U.S. I think it is really interesting, and I think now the opportunities for people who are not close to the ocean, because of remote work, allows you to you could be a customer service person in the middle of a country. Okay, if you have a good relationship with somebody, it doesn't matter where you sit. You can sit on top of a mountain. Doesn't matter. Like if you have that relationship with somebody and you have the information, you can still be a good client service rep or any other myriad of things in our industry.
Location today is for me is not a significant issue, because it's about commitment, it's about deliverables, it's about what people are willing to put in. But certainly, But for example, I've got a guy that sits in Oslo. He works from home. He's on his own. He's doing an amazing job.
Yeah. That's all you need. You just need. That's right. I mean, I've worked the last since March of 2020 remote, and I've continued to do that and, like you said, deliver. So it sounds like you travel, like you said, you're headquartered in Singapore and in Houston now. What are you throwing in your carry-on to read, or Audible book, or listen to wonderful podcasts? I don't know what you like to do to pass the very long time to go back to Singapore.
There's a lot of those. So I like you use it. This is not an advertisement, but I love using the Blinkist app, which is, I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've heard of it. I don't know what it does.
It's great. It condenses management and leadership publications down into 15-minute, or you can either listen to them or read them. It's amazing. So I use that a lot. When I'm sitting down and reading and relaxing, I used to, I like reading basically escapist novels, I'm reading a Tom Clancy at the moment.
Okay. Standard, good stuff.
I did just also read a book called Salt Blood, which is about a young, this was in the 1800s. It's about a young girl that disguised herself as a boy and then went to sea. That was an amazing story. Yeah, really, really good.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, that sounds very good. I've seen Blinkist. I think it's popped up on my Instagram feed. David, this was fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, sharing what's going on at Gulf, and kind of your view on not only digitalization but decarbonization and kind of the industry in general. I think this was great. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, David. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thanks very much.